Alright, so, Chapter 4, let's talk about it. Now this video is going to be about my thoughts on Chapter 4, mainly talking about gameplay oriented stuff, Uptype 4, and Mirror Dungeon Hard Mode as well. I won't talk about the story as I've already covered that, but I will talk about Magic Hellbussy's story. But before that, you know what time it is. Well, you might not, but it's a word from the sponsors of this video. Tokyo Treats and Sakura Co are snack boxes that give you the experience of Japan from your own home. Each of the boxes give you 20 snacks monthly with different themes. For example, Sakura Co's August theme is Festivals of Okinawa, and because of that, they give you a pretty chill fan with the box. But, let me bust out the face cam and eat up some of these foods. The first box I'm gonna try some stuff from is Sakura Co. They focus on more traditional Japanese food. Alright, this looks really soft. Let's see what it tastes like. Alright, that's nice. That's nice. My lord, that was very soft, bro. That was like eating into a cloud. It was like eating into a cloud, and then on the inside there was like a tiny bit of jello that was like a very lemony taste. That was really damn good. I need some more. Alright, so I got the Sanpin tea. This is like within here there's like a tea bag inside of it. And I used it on this. It's kind of like hard to see. Kind of see it a bit. But they gave you like two ones, so this is like the spare one I got, but let's try it out. I'm gonna make a confession, right? Most of the time, when I make tea, I kind of drown it in sugar. That's just how I drink tea. But this one I use no sugar, and this is one of the very few times I'm actually fine with drinking tea without any sugar. Like, this actually just tastes good. Now the next box is Tokyo Treats. It has more of a focus on the latest and exclusive food. Now, for the first item, we're starting off with one everyone loves. Kit Kats. A salt lemon Kit Kats. A flavor that you cannot find in Canada, at least to my knowledge. I'm like 99% sure on that one. But this is, oh, that is looking generous. Okay, let's get into it. Alright, why does Canada not have this? Why does Canada not have this? It tastes so good. Now that's it for the face cam, but don't just take my word that it's goated. In the description and in the comments, you could find a link to get your own box. You could also get it as a gift, but yeah, let's be honest, I'd hoard it for myself. Also provided with each of the boxes is a booklet that tells you more about the food and of any possible allergens. So thank you again to Tokyo Treats and Sakura Co for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into my thoughts about Chapter 4. Now real quick, I'm gonna start off with throwing hands. The amount of fights in Chapter 4 story, dear God, they put us on a pilgrimage. Now listen, I do appreciate the number of fights as it means I get bukaked by lunacy. I mean, shit, I've dreamed for this day. But like, bro, they did not give us 53 stages in the Depression Dungeon all for just this one chapter. Now listen, I appreciate the fact that they gave us about 21 pulls from just Chapter 4. But my lord, that pacing was brought out back and mutilated because of it. When I read through all the stages for a second time, the story was much easier to follow along with. Straight up because I didn't spend 10 minutes in between each cutscene hitting win rate as I scrolled through r/femboys. But I do think there's many things to break down about the stages in Chapter 4. One is that Project Moon definitely listened to feedback in between drops of Chapter 4. Because Part 2 is straight up some shit at a Hellraiser, that shit was torture. But Part 3, before the dungeon, was like 3 fights in a puddle I accidentally stepped into. Deadass, Part 2 was 20 fights in total. Part 3 was 5 in a dungeon. Not to mention that the Part 2 fights lasted around 8 turns each, while the Part 3 fights felt like I was bullying children. Them motherfuckers barely lasted 4 rounds. They were deadass walking in like fucking Glass Joe. Now listen, I personally like when fights take around 8 turns or so to beat, as that is when they're actually interesting to me. Because near the end of the fight you can start launching out egos as you actually have the resources for them, and from there the complexity of the game opens up further. Or you just use Yi, Sun Shower, and Waffle Stomp them. Personally, I'd like to see more fights that take around 8 turns to beat, instead of just 4 turns and we're done. However, I wouldn't like to see that many fights of that nature in between story chapters, as again, that fucks with the pacing like how I want to fuck Sinclair. But I do want to get lunacy, you know? The thing with gacha games is generally you get more roll currency the further you go with the story chapters. So it'd be weird if Chapter 4 gives us 21 rolls, but Chapter 5 gives us like 10, as Project Moon may cut down on a lot of the fights to help with the pacing. So personally, I'd like to see less fights in Chapter 5, but those fights are longer and provide us with more lunacy. Hell, maybe even build off of how the Magic Hellbus's final stage was. In that, the EX requirement is within 15 turns. Maybe in Chapter 5 we could have the stages give 60 lunacy on EX, that has a requirement of 15 turns max. So that way, my greedy ass can hoard more insanity, we get less fights in between cutscenes, and in those fights we can play around with egos more. And deadass, one question I've had for a minute is, Bro, how the hell are we gonna get off Aleph egos in a 4-turn fight? Bro, I struggled to get off He egos, and you're telling me that shit is not the max affinity cost? So, that's just my personal thoughts on Chapter 4's pacing. Though now let's get to the talk of the town, Uptype 4. Now listen, alright, people treated Uptype 4 as if it had just slaughtered their family. Dog, they treated that shit as the boogeyman, fear incarnate. And honestly, there kinda do be some merit to that shit, but hear me out fully on my thoughts on it. So, Uptype 4 costs 150 thread and 50 ego shards for a 3-star ID, 100 thread and 30 ego shards for a 2-star, 150 thread and 100 ego shards for a He ego, and I don't care to read out the other costs. The fact that I was able to read that much was an accomplishment in and of itself. Now the costs at first seem a bit much, but to me they're fine. In fact, I'll take another step and say they actually help the game. Now, why do I say that? Well, Limbus Company is a live service game, and one of the ways a live service game keeps its players engaged is via a grind. Some games like Destiny have you actively play the content to finish a grind, but gachas usually operate differently. In those, you have to spend a bit of your sanity and Kafelin, whatever the hell Azure Lanes is, I don't know, fucking Coomer points or some shit, and from there you build up resources daily. It causes players to have something to go for in the game, a reason to keep playing. And to me, that's what Uptype 4 is. The grind gives people something to go for in between content drops. I mean shit, in between chapter 3 and 4, all I did was run 1 thread and 1 EXP and then proceeded to never use those materials. I just did the stages to get the missions done. But now I actually do them for a reason, because of Uptype 4. And in case you think the grind is too much, dog, in my opinion, it's really mild for a gacha game. Straight up, Arknights took me like a month before I was able to E2 a unit, and now they got the module system as well, which adds on even more grind to the game. But guess what? Arknights is still doing really well. The grind didn't kill the game, it just gave players something to aim for. Hell, I plan to E2 every unit in the game, just so I have a goal to aim for myself. That's kinda just how gacha games are. However, after saying all that, I need to clarify one thing. I'm fine with Uptype 4, but I don't know about Uptype 5. Provided it's a thing, because as of right now, it's basically just speculation. Because see, the worst part about Uptype 4 is the fact that it uses ego shards. Now, as of right now, it isn't asking for that much. However, let's say Uptype 5 costs 100 ego shards for a 3-star ID and 150 for a He ego. Well, that's a problem. The reason is because that increase would further the gap between those who buy the battle pass and those who don't. Now let's be honest, the best way to get ego shards is via the battle pass, in particular leveling it up past 60. Now because I have the battle pass, I get triple the amount of boxes after a level up than a free-to-play player would. After doing the weekly run of Mirror Dungeon 2 hard, I get 69, nice, crates, but a free-to-play only gets 23. Now on average you get 2 shards per crate. So I would get 130, enough to Uptype 4 He ego, and a free-to-play would only get 46, which isn't enough to Uptype 4 a 10th ego. Thankfully it's a bit below the amount for a 3-star ID, but that's still a huge difference. It's something that's a huge blow to free-to-play players, and a gacha game that's incredibly generous. Now, don't take this as me saying Limbus isn't a free-to-play friendly game. It still very much is, especially considering Uptype 4 is not needed at all. Straight up, Limbus is one of the few gachas where you can get everything in the game without needing to spend a dime. It's still one of the most free-to-play friendly gacha games I've played. However, let's say Uptype 5 releases, then Uptype 6 and so on. If with every new Uptype the ego shard cost increases further, then so too will the gap between those who spend money and those who don't. And if the content rises to match the most recent Uptype level, then Limbus will quickly become a pay-to-win faster game. Faster because the free-to-play can still get Uptypes beyond 3, but it will take longer. Considering if we get further Uptype costs, that is. Again, this is all basically speculation. Which is why I feel that we should either stay with Uptype 4 being the max level or have any future Uptype costs be regulated to threads only. And also, we dead need a new thread level, motherfucker, we starving out here. Bro, the current thread level has me feeling like a crackhead flipping over couch cushions to find the last quarter so I can buy a gram. Yo, deadass, we need another level. But I'd imagine that'll come with time. Though I do want to clarify that even though there exists a possibility that further Uptypes can cause a pay-to-win gap, if we're looking at an extreme possibility, I would not say that shit even remotely exists within the current state of the game, not even close. It's just a possibility. Now, that is my thoughts on the Uptype 4 costs, and also, little side note, I feel like the base ID should have been upgraded for free. However, now we schmoove on into how much Uptype 4 has helped the game, the good of it. Now, I'm gonna keep it 1,000 with you, some IDs got fucking sand thrown into their face, a dead spit on, but others got that fucking super serum. Dog, some of these motherfuckers be juicing after this shit. And deadass, that's what I was hoping to see. I'll keep it a buck, Rabbit Heathcliff didn't really get that much. But motherfucker don't need much more, he already has the power to rival God. What's good is some of the weaker IDs got great buffs. Keyword being some, but still. A straight up Boys Love Ye song actually got some heat. I mean, it needed a fucking supernova to actually start cooking, but it's a good step. Meanwhile, our Corp Ishmael got probably the best buff out there, which made Mind Whip no longer dumb as hell. I mean, I still have an uptime forward her because I've been focused on mounting Ishmael, but it is what it is. Hell, her Artisar even got a nice buff as well. Shit got turned into an AoE. Bro, deadass, Ishmael's been cooking, and it ain't even chapter 5 yet. And W Corp Dawn is also balling. She didn't get that many changes, but she still got a nice buff to her skill 1, making it no longer as weak as my will to not simp for Sinclair. Now, of course, there has been some male ones like Yuri Faust, though all in all I like Uptype 4. Generally, weak IDs got buffed and already strong IDs didn't get even more dominant. For the most part. Though alright, Mirror Dungeon 2 hard mode, let's break it down. Now at first, yeah, this shit kinda made me lose my mind, I ain't gonna cap. However, after the changes were made, it became less RNG focused. As in the past it felt like RNG can screw you, you lose a clash, and then one of the centers gets turned into paste. So in my opinion the floors all feel fairly well balanced. Though there is a problem with floor 1. The blunt encounter of that floor is considerably stronger than the slash and pierce encounter. Dog, the blunt encounter feels like you are squaring up against Mike Tyson in his prime, whilst the other twos feel like you're going up against a Discord admin. Wait, I made a Discord server. Bro, that means I just roasted myself. Fuck. But some straight up advice for the mirror dungeons is, for the first floor, stay away from the blunt fights. Now, there's really only 2 complaints I have with the hard mode dungeon. One is that my form empties and the bull are way too difficult. Their clash values need to be brought down a bit. The other is that the fights aren't very interesting. They lack what made Library of Ruina fights intriguing, which is the need to plan out and think about mechanics. The current fights just feel like match bigger numbers to smaller numbers. However, this is a problem that will be fixed with time, as when later chapters get dropped, we'll get new enemies that are more interesting to go up against. Well, let predict God that they're more interesting. Though one thing I love is the ability to do 1 hard mode run a week and be done with the dungeons. Holy shit, that is an amazing change. Hell, I wish that shit was the case for all difficulties of it too. That one change made me 10 times more tolerable of mirror dungeons, as I ain't gonna lie, doing 3 of them weekly had me bored as hell. Thankfully I was watching Live Leak as I did it, so that helped me come to the realization that there are worse fates. Another goated part of it is the changes to shops and rest stops. The introduction of costs makes it feel closer to being a roguelike, as I now feel like I could actually go for specific builds and strategies by buying the proper gifts in the shops, or buying the right IDs for my build, instead of how it was in the past with it being randomized on who you can get. I still wouldn't say the gameplay of mirror dungeons is a selling point of the game, like how integrated strategies is for archives. And yes, I will always make that comparison, I don't give a damn. IS3 is fun as hell, and if mirror dungeons can get to that level, then that shit would be fire. But overall, I'd say Mirror Dungeon 2 is a W. The fights are bland right now, but that's a problem that will be fixed with time. But now, let's get into the last thing I want to talk about in this video, the 4.5 story. Oh, but actually real quick, it's nice as hell that the grind is not as egregious as 3.5 was. Cause A, the total we gotta farm is less, and B, we ain't gotta go through some dumb ass dungeon, motherfuckers. Let's go. That shit was ass. I'm so glad I only gotta do an abnormality fight, as I get to watch Breedable Sinclair contribute nothing meaningful to the group, cause that bitch be weak as fuck. Though it's nice as hell that we get to use 7 people for the fight. Makes the IDs giving us bonus rewards less of a hassle to deal with. Oh, also the gates on progress being tied to how much scrap you got is weird as hell, honestly. I don't see why that's in the game. But the story. Now, 4.5 is what I want to see a shit ton more of. That shit was the greatest advertisement for Chapter 5. I don't give a fuck. Dog, they could come out with some Final Fantasy 14 level trailer and say Sinclair's getting a bunny suit ID, and that shit still won't be as hype as 4.5 was. Okay, that's a dead lie. If they said Sinclair was getting a bunny suit ID, then I would actually turn rabbit. But seeing Ishmael, who's known to normally be calm as hell, be completely plagued by the thought of going into the lake is all the right kinds of terrifying. All the right kinds of terrifying? Dog, that was the most beta shit I've ever said. But seeing the thought of it completely change her as a person was some amazing writing. Especially considering the fact that we haven't seen that much of the ocean. It's Horror 101. Showing the monster will make it infinitely less scary than if you never showed it at all. So with this event, we see a calm character go ballistic and is assured we are all going to die. She saw us fight Wings, destroy N-Corp, and knows a color fixer is on our team. And yet she is still fully convinced we will die, no two ways about it. The only knowledge we have of the Great Lake is that it's the worst shit we've ever seen, and all of our past experiences are nothing by comparison to what it has in store. And we need to stew on that knowledge for months. That right there is how you build up a chapter. Straight up, I believe Ishmael. Our group is fucking stupid. I ain't got a damn clue how in the hell we're gonna survive that shit, yo. Straight up. I can only envision us running from the whale. Unless fucking Poseidon comes in there to help our asses, we ain't gonna be able to step up to that bitch. It ain't even remotely close. Lest we even talk about Ahab and all the shit Ishmael has with that motherfucker. Regardless though, 4.5 was peak. Ishmael going insane like some shit out of Darkest Dungeon was a joy to watch. That shit sounded sadistic as fuck, but I'ma own it. However, Chapter 4 and the stuff that's come with it, like Mirror Dungeon Hard Mode, has been a W. The story was the best we've gotten out of Limbus. 4.5 was a great prologue as well. Uptide 4 helps give more stuff to aim for in the game. Mirror Dungeons became easier to run weekly and takes me to Nirvana as I watch the past EXP go up. But there are some drawbacks like the pacing of Chapter 4 not being the best, possible worries with Uptides Beyond 4, and the fact that the battles in Mirror Dungeon Hard Mode are pretty bland. Overall though, Chapter 4 brought the game to new heights and is my favorite chapter so far. Cause I'ma keep it 100 with you. When I read through the story for a second time, that Fly Broken Wings segment at the end had me shed a tear. And that is the most I'ma tell any of y'all about me being emotional. Hell, I even cried during a video of my playthrough in Library of Ruina. And I ain't telling anyone which video that shit's in. It's been years, but I'm taking that shit to my grave.